My name is Mr. Willie Pierre. I'm a 16-year veteran math teacher. I'm currently serving as the department lead at the school that I'm serving at for mathematics. So I've taught math and science to middle school kiddos. That is definitely my lane. Anything from fifth grade all the way through eighth grade.
Yeah. So how did you get into education? Like how did you always
um,
want to be an educator? Always want to be a teacher?
nah. I started off, earned my degree in actually biology from
Okay.
Northeastern University up in Massachusetts. That's where I was born and raised. Earned my degree, worked in a couple labs, moved down to Georgia and was there for a couple of years working at Emory University, actually, in one of their research labs. And the principal investigator, one day as we were having a debrief about one of the many things that we were studying, was like, "Hey, Willie, you seem to glow when you got to teach the graduate and undergrad students who come through."
Yeah.
He was an older gentleman. He was like, I may be wrong, but I think your calling may be education. Like, give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, you're an awesome worker. You can always have a job back here. And so I went to a middle school, subbed there for about a week, spoke to the principal afterwards and was like, you don't have a lot of men on your campus. In the school that was a Title I school, which was like 96, 97% black and brown kiddos.
Yeah.
And he was also like, I know I don't have a lot of men. I would love to have more men to be in this profession. Um, would you like a position? I was like, heck yes. So I went, got all the certification that I needed, and jumped into it and haven't looked back since.
Yeah. And so that's a big thing, having men on campus, right?
Yeah.
Especially men of color.
Yep.
Especially men of color, right? And so um what do you have to say about that?
I mean, when I first got in, it was 2%. I made up 2% of the men in the profession. And now, currently, when this airs or when you produce this, it'll be roughly 1.3%.
Wow.
The pandemic really shook things up. And for about, I'd say a good solid year, like I was hopeful that things were going to change.
Mm,
Um, but as we've had this conversation before, like we had a really great opportunity to reimagine what education looked like for our kiddos, and I feel like we missed the ball. But I'm still hopeful, which is why I'm still in this profession. That um, just because we missed it doesn't mean that it's the end of it. We being sport fans, this is like our game 7, so we still got
yeah.
some time. We still got a couple quarters, still got some minutes on the clock to hopefully change things. I would love things to change, and I think that what is going to help to change that are the things that we're fully aware of. Like everything comes down to dollars, and
Yeah.
so teachers number one just to be compensated across the board, regardless of your race or gender. We need to be compensated better, and then two, folks who are in the profession. Um, we shouldn't have to jump through so many hoops to remain in the profession. I mean, you chuckle because you already know what I'm talking about. Like the
Yeah.
number of things that we've got to do to um, be a teacher is, in my opinion, just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I know for others, like you can somehow, once you get that certification, once you get that whatever, you somehow get compensated with your salary. But that is not the case for us. Like there are plenty of
No.
us who have our bachelors, have our associates, have masters, have PhDs, and what we're being compensated for after spending that much, and then it's not returned on the back end is wild. So
Yeah, talking about those hoops though, like so you're you get you you're a teacher now and you're already teaching at least for us.
yep,
It takes 10 years to max out on your salary.
right,
And it takes 10 years, so you go through 10 steps, and then you got to earn a certain amount of credits each step.
yep,
So that's a lot of school. That's 10 years of going back to school and taking these classes. And most people say, you know what, I just gotta get a master's degree. I'll get a couple master's degrees, and then then I'll get to the end of the pay scale.
yeah,
That's what I did, and that's how I ended up getting my administration credentials, because I was like, you know what, if I'm gonna get something, I might as well get an administration credential, and then who knows, I might be administrator one day. And here I
yeah,
am, right? But it took 10 years to do that. And then when you're an administrator, right, like you just can't apply. Like if I got my administration credentials, but then you have to apply to something called the Aspiring Assistance Principal Program,
yeah,
and you got to do that, and then you got to pass that,
hmm
right? And then you have to apply, and hopefully you get a job, right? And then after that, you have to clear your credential. So you have to clear your admin credential, and that's another 2 years, and
Yeah,
it's just like hoop after hoop
hoop
after
after
hoop,
hoop.
and it's tough. I don't know what it is like in your district. Is it similar?
I'm similar to you. I was teaching
Yeah.
up in Echo Park, and I'm now down in LB. Um, but I came from Connecticut,
Okay.
and to transfer all of my credentials, and this was during the pandemic, so I was like, all right, I can understand if things are sort of slow. But all of the hoops that I had to go through to get my CT credentials transferred over to CA,
Hmm.
that was a hassle where I lost a good chunk of a year or so of like, look, I'm not getting paid and compensated what I ought to because everything is moving so super slow. And then on top of like what you were speaking to of, I thoroughly enjoy the classroom. And this is
Yeah.
no hate to admin because I've seen enough of your TikTok, so I know you feel the same way.
Yeah.
Um, I want to be in the classroom, but there's going to be that point where it's like, this is the most that I'm going to earn. And gas is not getting cheaper. Milk is not getting cheaper. Cost of living is not getting cheaper. So I know there's going to be a point where I'm going to have to say, look, if I want to continue to support me and my family, I'm going to have to go to that next level of being an admin in order to earn the pay that comes along with it. And it's like, if I were a plumber, I would start off as an apprentice. I would then become a plumber, become a master plumber, and then that's it. Like I'm just
Yeah.
going up levels, and I'm earning whatever I'm charging because of my levels and the amount of time and experience. Like if I've been a plumber for 25 years, like I know what I'm doing, and you're paying for that expertise of knowing like I can fix this in an hour as opposed to if I was an apprentice, it's going to take me 2 hours. Similarly for a
Yeah.
teacher, and a lot of the things that you speak on in regards to difficult students, it's like I know the teacher moves because I've been doing them for so long to know like, hey, relationships are super key, but that's not it. That's not it. That's not the only thing. You have to know the content. You have to know the scope and sequence. You have to know
Hmm.
how to differentiate for the different kiddos. You have to know
Hmm.
like, all right, the kiddos who you think are giving you the most issues are usually the kiddos who are so bright. They've already answered your question mentally, and they've already like, all right, I'm done. I know the answer to the question. Let me just keep it moving. And so, if you
Yeah.
are a teacher who knows how to do that, you should be compensated for that. And unfortunately, like we already mentioned, there are so many hoops that we got to go through that it's unfortunate, and it
Yeah.
causes folks who are in the profession to be like, I would love to do this, however, I got to live, and so I choose to dip out and go elsewhere.
Yeah, and so when I was a classroom teacher, I was like, I have to do summer school every year. Like every
Right.
year, I have to do summer school. And when there's a Saturday intervention, I'm gonna do Saturday intervention. And when they offer like after school tutoring for whatever amount a month, I'm gonna do that too because
Yeah.
that's the only way that I'll be able to survive. And so
Yeah.
I was doing all of those things. I was doing all those things
Yeah.
when I was a classroom teacher. And the plus side to that, right, is that all of that counts toward your retirement. So like the summer school, all the years I did summer schools and all the years I did after school interventions, that's all hours toward my retirement or whatever. So that's a plus side. But I had to do all of those things in order to to survive as a teacher, right? And then you do get the admin salary, and it all depends on what the amount of students in your school. So if you have a big
Mm-hmm.
school, you're getting paid a lot more,
Yep.
right? If you're at a high school and there's a big campus and you got thousands of students, you're gonna get paid a lot more.
Yep.
Versus you're at a school with 200 students and you have like 12 teachers and it's a tiny little school, you're probably getting paid just as much as a teacher would get paid. Like
Right.
the assistant principal is probably getting paid just as much, almost a little bit more than what a teacher
Right.
gets paid. And it crosses my mind. I'm like, okay, look at I'm this. It's called I'm on the B scale or whatever. Like I work more hours. I work 8 hours every day a day. I go 2 weeks before school starts, and when school ends, I'm 2 weeks there more. 2 weeks after that. So I don't know. I feel like it might average out like to a classroom teacher's pay.
Oh, and this
Yeah,
this is no shade to admin, because the admin who do their job and the admin who are magnificent, this is not to you. Similar to anytime someone's like, hey, bad teachers, I'm chilling because I know you're not talking about me.
yeah,
So this what I'm saying is, even for you, like listening to all of what you're talking about, you're like, hey, I work 8 hours. I know for you for sure,
I work
you're
8 hours.
working more than 8 hours.
Yeah, I work a lot.
I
I work
know.
a lot.
And however much you're being compensated, like you're weighing all of those things in, just like you mentioned. Because if you're at a campus where there are only 200 kids, then your pay is there. Whereas if you were doing the same job at a campus with twice that much, your pay is going to be different. And so you're doing all of these calculations.
Yeah,
That personally, I don't feel like you should, because if you were, yeah, if you were in any other profession, your pay is your pay, and you do what you, because you're doing what you're doing.
yeah.
I can understand from state to state maybe because cost of living, but it's yeah, there are a lot of things I would like to change in the profession, but I know
It's hard.
yeah, it's hard. It's hard, and it's going to need a lot of us to be on the same page in order to get that change to happen.
And then to add to that, I come home and I'm making videos. So I
Yep.
come home and I'm making videos and I'm on a podcast, right? And you
Same.
inspired me. You inspired me with the podcast, right? Because when you invited me on your podcast,
Yeah.
afterward I was like, you know what? I think I could do a podcast. And
Yeah.
it took me, I don't know, we did the interview, I don't know, last year sometime, or I don't know, was it last year sometime? Something like that.
It was yeah, 14 so months ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a while back. And so it took me a good 6 to 8 months to be like, you know what, let me get this, let me figure it out. Let me figure it out.
Yeah.
Let me get this thing going.
Yep.
But I come home, I'm making videos. I come home, it's like 4 o'clock, whatever, 4 o'clock ish. I eat dinner, take a shower with the family. My kids are grown already, so they don't really need me that much. Um, they're grown. So about like 6:30, from 6:30 to about, I don't know, like 8ish,
hmm
I'm making content. I'm making
Yeah.
content. I'm writing up scripts. I'm responding to different people that have questions, like legit questions, because
Yep.
there's some wild stuff out there that people say on the on the
Ooh.
internet, and some
Yeah.
mean stuff, some mean stuff.
Yeah.
And so, I'm responding to people, and I'm like, let me see what I could do. How much could I help? How much could I
Yep.
make a difference? And that's a lot of time, and I'm not compensated for all that. It's out of love. This is all this stuff right here, this podcast, it's out of love, because
Same.
I'm so small that I'm not getting paid for any of that.
Yeah.
I ain't getting paid for any of that.
And there are so many of us who are just like that, who are content creators or individuals who just care about this profession, who want the best. And I like you are I'm thinking about the folks who are coming after me. Like
Yeah.
I look at your content and I'm just like, I know that you are putting this out for the like that younger version of you. The reason why I started
Hmm.
my podcast too was because it was the first time that I was with one, two, three, about five other black men
Yeah.
who were teaching content. Not the resource officer, not the PE teacher, and no, again, no shade to those folks.
Yeah.
But many of the campuses that I've been at, those were the positions that black men were relegated to.
Hmm.
And there's just a few black men on campus who are teaching content, whether it be English, history, math, science, whatever. And so to be at a school where there were four or five of us who were teaching content, I was like, fellas, I've been in this profession for quite a number of years, and this has been rare. To be able to sit in a room with four or five other black men at different levels, with however many years underneath their belts, just to be able to chop it up and like, hey, what's working for you? What's working for you? How do you do this? How do you integrate that? And that's how the podcast sort of got birthed, so that future generations could listen, or folks who are on the other side of the country or other side of the world or wherever they may be, to hear just like, hey, this is what's going on in the classroom, and this is what works for me. Give it a shot.
Yeah.
Um,
So let's talk about that podcast for a second.
yeah,
Yeah. So your podcast, you explain your podcast a little bit, because
sure.
I don't want to give it, you go ahead and do it.
We'll do. We'll do.
Yeah.
My podcast is called The Chronicles of Mister. In the beginning, that was just it. I was called Mister. Folks would chop, the kiddos would chop off my last name, like, hey, Mister this, Mister that. And I
Yeah.
knew that it was done out of love, that it wasn't out of like, hey, we don't care about what your last name is. But I knew that it was done out of love. And I also know, having been in the profession, that kiddos are also wanting to be invested in someone. But if that person's only there for a couple months and then they dip out midway through the year, they're like, hey, why am I truly going to call you Mr. Vergara? Why am I
Yeah.
going to invest in you, call you Mr. Pierre? You're Mr. And until you are here for a number of years and you show me
Yeah.
that you are really about this life of caring for my future, you're just a Mister. So that's the reason why it's called The Chronicles of Mister. The Chronicles of Mister, similar to your podcast, is where I have conversations with educators, who have either been in the profession, are coming into the profession, or are transitioning in or out of the profession, and for whatever reasons, just talk about their experiences and what has been a benefit, why they come into the profession, what's kept them in the profession. Similar to you, of like, hey, this is what I saw, and this is what I wish I would have had when I was a newbie teacher. And so It's how to be able to give back. And it's just really nice to be able to chop it up with folks, other individuals like yourself, to hear and know, like, oh, the stuff that's happening in my classroom, on my campus, or in my district isn't isolated and siloed just to my area. There are some bits and pieces that are happening elsewhere. And this is how we're going to get changes, when we actually start speaking with one another and working towards the same common goal.
Yeah, and most of your guests are African American men and women, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Season one, I am now wrapping up season three. Season one was a lot of that, of just
Mm,
black and brown folks. Season two, there have been more Caucasians and folks who identify differently other than black.
yeah.
And season three has just been a myriad of different folks, from not just in education, but also entrepreneurs who are teachers who were in the classroom, who have now created their own businesses, folks such as yourself who are
Mm,
content creators who are making either TikToks or IG Reels or whatever it may be, YouTube, such as yeah, such as both of us
mhm,
with our
mhm,
podcasts that are on these different platforms, with the goal of educating and supporting teachers so that more of us can stay in the profession. I started off in my first season, like I said, there was 2% black men in the profession.
mhm.
Now in season three, we're down to 1.3. And so I am doing my best
That's a
in
problem.
hopes, yeah, in hopes of changing the tide and encouraging whoever will listen to, one, stay in the profession, come in the profession, and then those admins who are um, at that hiring position, to hire black men who are applying for those positions.
So I want to go back to that. I think I asked you this question earlier, but the importance of men of color on campus,
Yeah,
right? I think that's so huge, right? It's so huge. I work in Boyle Heights. I work in Boyle Heights, and I feel that my presence on that campus, and I feel like it's needed.
yeah,
Like it's something that's needed. Um, and that's not to say that the women on campus. We need the women on campuses. So I think it needs to be a balance, right? It shouldn't be just all men on campus, or it shouldn't just be all women on campus, right?
absolutely.
But I feel like there is a lack, like you're saying, 1.3 men, black men as educators. That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem. So how do we get more black men to be educators?
Number one, everything, like most things, comes down to money, comes down to the numbers. I'm a math teacher, and so I know the data shows that the number of hours that teachers work, we know it's more than 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
It's on average we're working roughly about 66.2 hours a week.
Hmm.
And that's to say we have new teachers who just haven't found that balance yet. So it's understood that, hey, as a new teacher, you're going to put a little bit more in, and then the veteran teachers, because we have that experience, we know how to manage our year, and we know how to manage things, and because we have a larger scope of what the academic year looks like, and what's truly important for whatever subject that you're teaching, we're able to have that balance of truly, like, hey, my work hours are from this to this, and so I'm just working that. And so on a Sunday, I'm not spending hours preparing lessons or doing all that. That's been done during the week. Whereas a newbie teacher, they've got those Sunday scaries instead of enjoying the playoff game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Exactly.
I would say number one is compensation, but number two is what we're attempting to do, which is just mentorship. We got
Hmm.
to have mentors who are already in the school, so that when those teachers come in, black men, if we're speaking specifically, when they come in, they see someone else who looks like them, who's
Yeah.
there, who can speak to what they are going to experience. Because there's something, I was born and raised in Massachusetts. And so when I moved over here to California, I just straight up told my kids, I said, hey, kiddos, you're gonna have to tell me what's what. Where's the best place to eat? Where's the best place
Yeah.
to get a taco? Where's the best place to do this? What should I wear? What should I not wear? There's a whole culture of, hey, because I was born in Massachusetts, I love the Red Sox. However, my kids would click to say, like, hey, Mr. Pierre, you may not want to wear that Boston Red Sox hat because it's going to signal this, this, and this. And I was like, thank you very much. Hey, Mr. Pierre, I know you really like those kicks. You got those Nikes. Maybe you don't want to wear those Nike Cortezes because they may mean this. And I'm like, hey, kiddos, thank you very much. And I'm humble enough, and I'm not going to wow, like, oh no, who are these kids going to tell? No,
Yeah.
you know the lay of the land. Bet you tell me. And so similarly, the teachers who are in the school, they can mentor those new teachers coming in to say, hey, you be you. I don't want you to attempt to be Mr. Pierre because there's only one. There's only one of one. However, When you're doing your thing, be aware of this, be aware of this, and be aware of that. Year
Yeah.
one. Year two, be aware of this, be aware of this. Year three, be aware of this. So that they have their opportunity to sort of get their footing. Because I think when we had our conversation, we both were like, year one of teaching is just survive. there
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
it's so much that it's just survive.
Yep.
If you're if you feel like you've got it all down in year one, I'm saying to you, like, wowzers, you're the
Yeah.
golden child, and good props to
Exactly.
you.
Yeah.
But for most of us, it's like it takes a year, two, and for me, it wasn't until year three that I felt like, okay, I
Hmm.
now have an idea of what the scope and sequence is, what's really important. I have an idea of how to create these relationships with kids, and the kids have seen me here for 3 years at this particular
Hmm.
school, that they know, okay, we know who Mr. Pierre is. He's actually going to be here. And then, all right, now how to truly manage a classroom. When there is that difficult student, what do I do? What should I be doing at the beginning of the year? What should I do that first week of school to sort of
Yeah.
sprinkle those seeds so that later on in the year when the kiddos have those issues, and I tell them, look, kiddos, you're like the planets. You're going to have those ups and downs, round and rounds, whatever. But I'm going to be the sun. I want to be constant. That whatever I said on day one, you're going to see that on day 10. You're going to see that on day 30, on day 50. And then by day 180, and it's like, yeah, Mr. Pierre was Mr. Pierre. It's okay for kiddos to have those up and down. We as teachers need to teach them. And so I
Yeah.
feel like those are the two biggest things. Compensation and mentorship
And
are the two
mentorship.
things is really going to
Yeah.
help.
And I think that that's what you're doing on your podcast, like you were saying, and I'm doing on my podcast, and we're doing on social media, is to try
Yeah,
to put our wisdom, our knowledge out there, so that the next generation of teachers coming up can take a look and and see that there are people who know how to do certain things, and they could get tips, and whatever we have to offer, they could take that and roll with it.
absolutely.
Because I
Absolutely.
know when I was growing up, being a educator, there was no social media. I
No.
couldn't click on TikTok or Instagram or go on YouTube
Yeah.
was barely a thing, and it wasn't,
Yeah.
people weren't making content on being managing a classroom.
No.
And so now as an educator, a young educator, you could see all these videos, but then on the flip side, you see all the negative videos out there. There are so
Ooh.
many negative videos out there, and it's in my feed all the time, like all these
Yeah.
negative videos about how, like, you know I'm leaving the profession, is one that I always see all the
Mhm.
time. I'm leaving the profession. Haha, you're still in education. I'm leaving, and I'm gonna make all this money doing these other things, right? That's one of the
Yeah.
videos. Another one is like, I'm still a teacher, but I'm bitter, and I'm gonna make this content about
Yeah.
making students look, however,
Hmm.
there's another thing where it's like, let me complain about everything. Let me complain
Yeah.
about admin, the teacher, everybody, parents. Let me complain about everybody else.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that. So if you're a young educator, most of the videos you see on social media are that, all the negativity out there. And
Yeah.
then it makes you think like, well, wow, I don't know if I want to be an educator.
Right. Right.
I don't know if I want to be that. Is your feed the same way? Is it, you see the same thing on TikTok and Instagram?
That was my feed. I'd say year two. A lot of season two was um, just getting folks who are like, no, I'm leaving, I'm leaving, I'm leaving, I'm out. Admin's not supportive, admin's not this, admin's not that. A lot of the negativity. And it really took, again, a great mentor of mine um, to just be like, but what is it at the core of you, Wooly, that you want? Like, because if you are looking for your people, you'll find your people. And so
Mm,
if you are about that negativity, don't worry. It'll find you and you will find it. However, if you're about, hey, I really love this profession because I know that it was several great teachers and several not so great teachers who told me or left an impression on me of like, hey, I don't want that.
yeah,
Or I know what a great teacher's like. I know what it feels like to have someone older than me have that experience who pours into me and then sees something in me that I don't necessarily see right off the jump, whether it be in school or after the academics. It was that um, boss of mine who saw something in me in terms of being an educator that I didn't see in myself and was like, hey, Willie, give this a shot. I think you
yeah,
might be great at it. Um, and so that's what I'm trying to pour back out. But you're absolutely right. It's difficult because the thing that'll get the clicks, the thing that'll get the most attention, is that negativity. I'm just
yeah,
choosing not to go that route. And so
yeah,
I just consciously, when that does pop off on my feed, I'm like, let me go find the piece of advice like yourself. Let me go find, for example, another positive educator. Like a couple come to my mind, like Dr. J. She's doing great work in regards to science. I think about
Mm,
kind of sort of teacher Ty. She's doing great work now that she's transitioned over from being in the classroom and now supporting teachers by creating classroom content. I think of Jasmine, Miss J, who's doing other math content for. So there, if you want it, it's out there. You can
yeah.
find it. And then shout out to you as well, who's doing great stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of social media, let's bring up the young educator who's got his hair,
Yeah, yeah,
like I remember when it first came out. This was like a week ago when it first came out, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
I was just scrolling. I was just scrolling through TikTok. I didn't even know what I saw. I just scrolled through it, and I stopped for a second because I thought it was a little odd. I was like, "Oh, that's weird." And maybe I watched a few seconds of it, and I was like, "That's weird." And I just kind of
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna say the next day, it's like all of my feed is like,
Yeah.
hey, and everybody's giving their opinion about it. Like, hey, this is, and everybody's, for with him or they're against him the first day, like with him or against him. And for me, the first time I saw it through the lens of a dad, and that's my
Mm-hmm.
daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And if I walk in and I peek in the classroom, my daughter's touching another man's hair, and she's in middle school, I'm gonna be upset. I'm gonna be pissed off. I might just walk straight into the classroom and say something or do something because I shouldn't be seeing it. That shouldn't be happening. What's going on? It's on live. Like there's a camera out, and I'm like, what's really going on here? That was my initial thought when I first saw it.
For me, when I first saw it, I number one cringed because it was like you said, it was at school and the children's faces were not blurred. That's the thing that hit me immediately. I was like,
Mm,
dude, and this is where the mentorship comes in. There should have been someone who had spoken to him to have said, like, look, number one, as a man, you be on campus, cover your backside because it's unfortunately for us, there's a double standard of, hey, you're a man in education and you're dealing with kids.
yeah.
Make sure all your T's are crossed, all your I's are dotted, everything is on the up and up, and that there's very little doubt or the opportunity for doubt to creep in because we will not have the benefit of the doubt. We're going
Mm,
to have the burden of proof to prove that, hey, if someone says anything like, no, I have the proof that there was another adult in the room or there was another student in the room, that all these things to cover your backside. So that was number one for me. Number two was, like you, why are you live streaming this while you're at work? That to me was just like, yo,
mm,
this is not professional.
mm,
And then I was like, there's so many, like I said, there's so few of us, 1.3% of us. We're not monolithic. I don't speak for all black men. I just speak for me. And I would have said to dude, like, this is not the place for it. I'm happy
yeah,
that you feel as if you're creating, that your students feel enamored and feel like safe with you. That's great. However, the moment you put it out into the world, the rest of the world doesn't have the context that you may have. And similarly, you as a parent, like you were just saying, if you walk by and you see that, you see your daughter doing that to the man, daughter, girl, man,
yeah, yeah,
right there, there's a power dynamic that if you don't understand, then it's already like, dude, you're not on the same level with her. You're not on
yeah,
the same level with them. You are here, the rest of the class is here, and when you say XYZ whatever, they understand, okay, we got to do whatever Mr. So and so say in the context of the classroom. And so
yeah.
for you to sort of blur those lines of like, now we're somehow friends, I'm not your friend.
No,
I'm not my students'
no,
friends. I'm
no.
your teacher.
That's right.
Like, and even if you were one of those teachers where like, oh, this is my nephew, my niece, my son, and my daughter. When I'm at school, when I'm at work, I'm Mr. Pierre. I'm not dad. I can't be dad in that instance or all those instances if the rest of the classroom is there. And so
Yeah,
there were so many moments where watching it from the outside, I was like, this is not going to end well. I made a post and I just said, look, we are like that solar eclipse that just happened a couple months ago. There's not a lot of us. There's
Mhm.
so few of us that when you open it up for the again where there's speculation and folks are going to have to decipher what's going on here, we don't have the benefit of the doubt. We have the burden of proof of proving like, oh no, everything that we're doing is on the up and up. Here's why, here's why, here's why. It's not cool, but it is
Yeah.
the reality in the world that we live in.
Yeah,
So
and yeah, and I don't know whether or not, I went to his page and he gets a lot of views. He gets a lot of views and he gets stuff in the millions, and I'm like, okay, well, he maybe he's just doing this all for, money and clicks
yeah,
and, clout and, I don't know, that kind of deal. And I guess
yeah,
as a young educator, you might get caught up in all of that. Like,
yep.
let me get millions of likes. Let me get whatever, that many follow. He has a lot of followers too. He's pretty big.
And that's the other downfall. Well, let me not say downfall, but that's the other, I guess, road that educators have to navigate. Because if you are a content creator, it's recognizing that your students, in my opinion, should not be your content.
Yeah.
They just shouldn't. Um, all of that's everything that I do with my students, whether it's our secret handshakes, whether it's the whatever. Like I'm keeping that off of my page because that's between me and them. And then again, the context of if a person doesn't have the full context of what's going on, it's so easy for it to get misconstrued. And then what
Yeah.
happened with him, it gets taken left when it shouldn't be.
Yeah, it's tricky. Content creation is tricky.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
tricky, and for me, when I'm creating content, it's all about making content to help educators work with students with difficult behavior. Right
yeah,
here's some things. Here's some things. Here's a tip. Um, and that's like it's like my head is down. I'm like focused on this narrow focus. Like here it is. This is what I'm going to create,
yeah,
and I'm just going to create this, and I'm going to stay in this lane,
yes,
and I'm just going to share, what I know about this subject because I'm pretty good with this subject.
yeah,
Don't ask me all kinds of other stuff about other things. I'm not the I'm not the guy. I'm not the
yeah,
one. But if it's about how you work with students with difficult behavior, how you could manage a classroom, how do you build a relationship, how do you, hold weight, I could show you how to do that. I'm
yeah.
pretty good at that. And I just try to stay in this one lane as much as possible. And some I think it's been good. I think it's been helpful.
But the other thing I would say to you though is what I've appreciated about your content is that even though you've spoken about a couple things but you recognize, hey, this is if it's time to cook, this is where you're going to cook.
Hmm.
When it comes to classroom management, when it comes to building relationships, all of that, this is where Mr. V is going to be able to cook. I think for a lot of young educators, they're sort of like trying to find, hey, what is my lane?
Yeah.
And to that, I'm not going to shade you at all for trying this, for trying that, for trying the other thing. However, the number one thing that we don't want to do is put our students in jeopardy. I just don't want to do
Yeah.
that. And so the thing that always goes through my mind that a mentor said is like, look, Willie, if in doubt, do without. If there's ever a little shred of doubt of like, hey, this could really go left and someone could take this in the wrong way or misconstrue it because of whatever, nah, we're good.
Yeah.
Don't need to post that.
Yeah.
Leave that. Let that be a conversation that we have with that student or with that parent, with that family, with that admin. Doesn't need to be put out here where everyone else will get go to
Yeah.
chop it up and sort of try to interpret it. And it's like, nah, if there's any doubt, do without.
Yeah. And so let's go with difficult students with difficult behavior. All right.
Yeah,
You've been in the game for quite a long time. How do you how do you build relationship with students with difficult behavior?
it takes time. It takes time. So from the moment, and for me, I'm on a campus that's K through 8,
Mhm.
and so even before that student reaches middle school, which is what I teach, I'm going down to the kinders. I'm spending some
Yeah.
time with them. I'm going to first grade, second grade, third grade. So by the time they're in fifth grade, before they come into middle school, they know Mr. Pierre. I've been in
Yep.
their classroom. I've sat there. I've talked to them, learned their name, say, hey, I'm really looking forward to this, that, and the other. If they have a sibling, like, hey, your sibling has told me about you, da da da. Is it true that you like such and such? So I'm building relationships before the kiddo is in my classroom, before
Yeah.
like any sort of grades are important, because That's number one. So build those relationships before, at least for me, if I can, before they enter the classroom. If they are in the classroom where it's like a new student, whatever, then I'm doing some sort of chat with that person, that family. You know your student better than me. What's your student really into? What do they like? What do they dislike? And then something that I've started implementing since the pandemic is I have those families write a letter to that student. They don't know, that student doesn't know it. I put it in an envelope. I tell them, hey, your kiddo is going to have a day where it's just rough.
Mm,
Please, you know them best. What are they going to need to hear? What are they going to need to know that they are cared for and that they are loved?
it's
So
great
that
idea.
you just, when I text you and say, hey, or you can text me and say, you know what, kiddo last night had a rough night. I don't need to know what the reason is. You just got to tell me, handle with care. And then I know that text message or that email says, hey, take out that letter, give it to the kiddo so that the kiddo knows, like, whatever you're going through, today is like your free day. I'm going to let
Mm,
you, whatever you need to, in order to work it out. It can be, hey, Mr. Pierre, I just need to talk to you and tell you this, and this. I work in middle school, so I know that the middle school years are ups and downs. Particularly
yeah.
for me, seventh grade, whoo, when those hormones kick in, when they kick in, and
Oh yeah.
Monday they hate your guts, and by
Yeah.
Friday they love you again. And I'm like, I
Hmm.
get that. That's how you're supposed to be. Again, I'm the sun, constant. Y'all are planets where you're just having your rotations and revolutions around me. That's cool.
Hmm.
So it's those relationships. Two, when there are those moments, I go back to, hey kiddo, you're coming at me kind of wild.
Yeah.
Something must be going on, because this isn't the typical you. I know you to do this, and this. I know you to respond this, and this. I'm going to step away because I can obviously sense that something's wrong by the way that you answered or whatever. You don't need to tell me what's what. That's not my business. What is my business is to know that you're safe. And I just want to make sure that you're safe, and I want to make sure that the other kiddos are safe too. Safe
Yeah.
not just physically, but safe emotionally. And then
That's
lastly,
right.
because I'm a teacher, I'm like, academically, we got to be able to learn. So if you need your space, all you got to do is just put this little star in the corner of a piece of paper that I have on their desk, and I know that what that means, and the other kiddos know that what that means too. Of like, all right, homeboy or homegirl's having their moment. Let
Hmm.
them have their moment. Mr. Pierre, because he's already established this for all of us. We know what this means, and so we're not going to look to interject. We're not going to look to sort of kiki or ha ha at them and sort of make them now emotionally unsafe. They
Yeah.
get their moment because we all have their moments. Those, and I model that for them too as well. Like, hey kiddos, today's just not one of those days. Like, it was a rough weekend. I didn't sleep. I blah 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 blah. This
Hmm.
happened. This happened. This happened. So I'm not going to be the typical me. I'm going to give my best, but my best today is not my best from yesterday. And so I
Yeah.
do that early on in the year to model for them to be able to see, like, oh, okay, if he's doing it, then it's okay for me to do it. And so when the first kiddo does it, then I'm just like, then I reiterate to the rest of the classroom, this is a routine. Having a bad day, that's okay. And then I do the letter on the low low. The letter isn't in front of everyone. Everyone
Yeah.
knows that a letter's been written for them. They just don't know what's in the letter, and they don't know when they're going to get the letter, because it's the parent who lets me know, like, all right, this is when
Yeah.
we need to give it.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love it. Look, I hear that you the way when you're speaking about this, the one thing I hear is safety. Like you are keeping everybody safe. They feel
absolutely.
safe and they feel comfortable, and that's
Absolutely.
that's the bottom line. If you keep a classroom safe,
Yeah.
and you have different procedures in order to keep everybody safe, like you were just explaining,
Yeah.
that is the key. If you just did that, right? If you just kept everybody safe,
Hmm.
everybody calm, you're almost that's pretty much it. In my mind, that's pretty much it.
That's half the
Then
battle.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it right there. Everybody's safe, everybody feels good. All right. The next thing is, you demonstrate love. And I've said this in many of my posts. You demonstrate
Yeah.
love, and it's the biblical type of love, the love you find in the Bible.
And
That's what you do. Go ahead.
exactly, I was going to say, this is why we need more men. Because exactly what you're saying, I think a lot of our kiddos, when they have men in their lives, it's like either the coach who's like, you got to do this, you got to, and it's like rough.
Hmm.
And is there a time for that?
Hmm.
Absolutely. But there's also a time to be like, yo, kiddo, I'm proud of you. No,
Hmm.
no, I'm
Yep.
proud of you, kid.
Yep.
Boy or girl, I'm proud of you. Like, I see you. I see
Yep.
the things that you're doing. I'm super proud of you. And here's specifically what I'm proud of. I saw that you had this interaction with so and so. You could have reacted this way, but I saw that you did this instead. I heard that you used your words to explain to the person, hey, yo, this is how I'm feeling. When you said this or did that, this is how it made me feel. all of that I saw because I recognize and I know in the past you would have reacted this way because I saw that in the past, but this is what I see you doing. I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
So all of those things, it's not just your mom. I love my mom,
Yeah.
but when my dad would do that to me, golly,
Yeah.
I'm feeling like Superman. I can run through walls. I can, it's
Yeah.
okay to fail because fail is just, proof that I'm trying. Bet that's absolutely the reason why we need more men present and men who are aware and have that emotional intelligence as well as that spatial intelligence as well as just intelligence flat that, okay, how I'm going to model being a human being for not just the boys, but for the girls as well. Like, this is what it means to be a mature man.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
need to yell. I don't need to scream. I don't need to like intimidate and like loom over you. No, I'm gonna drop down on one knee,
Yep.
get to your eye level so that you see and you hear and you feel like, no, I see you as a human being. All I am is I'm older. That's
Yeah.
all I am.
Yeah.
I'm just an older person. I'm not better. I'm no less. I'm just older. And I think so many of our kids, and particularly for me, I'm more attuned to the black boys that we're seen as like disturbances, nuisances, everything that
Mm-hmm.
we would do is in this negative light where I'm just like, no, I understand why they are doing what they're doing because I used to do that. And
Yeah.
so to be able to give the context of like, no, I understand why you did this or this. You explain it to me though. Okay, we're both on the same page. Okay. Let me give you a piece of advice though. When you do this though, and you take up and you do da 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 da, this is how it could be misunderstood as this, that, or the other. Just be aware of it. I'm not trying to dim your light, kid. Be you, but just realize that when you do X, this is how it's going to be interpreted. And
Yep.
sometimes you may have to preface and use your words like, "I'm really excited right now. Is it okay if I step outside and just let out a ah?" Yes, it's absolutely okay to do that. Just
Yeah.
don't do
Yeah.
it. Just don't do it so that it disrupts the entire like our
Yeah.
whole floor. But yeah, I understand. Yeah, let it out.
Yeah. It's it's demonstrating that love. And then
Yeah.
like the next thing I always feel is you have to build them up. You're building up their self-esteem. You're
Amen.
just building up their self-esteem. You're putting them in a an environment of progress
Yeah.
where you're helping them, get from point A to point B, like here it is. And you highlight their wins and you highlight their progress and
Yeah.
you do it with respect, right? You
Yeah.
do it with respect and you hold them accountable. If you do all of that stuff, if you could do all of that stuff, your classroom will run smoothly. You will be fine. The whole year you'll be fine. You won't have to call anybody to save you or anything like that. You're going to be fine. And kids are going to feel
No.
comfortable in your classroom. And then you get to get this, I always call it weight, but clout, whatever you want to call it, but you start to get it, that swagger, that like, okay, Mr. P, Mr. V, they're legit. These
Yeah.
are some, and so when Mr. V goes and tells somebody in the hallway, hey, I need you to stop. Don't use that kind of type of language in the hallway. Come here, let me talk to you for a second.
Yeah.
And I just say, hey, don't use that. I expect more from you.
Yep.
That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Look at them in the eyes, look at directly in their eyes, speak to their good, speak to the God in
Mhm.
them, like, hey, this is what it is. I need you to stop. You're better than that.
Yep.
Because the kids know that I'm about keeping everybody safe. Because the kids know I'm all about like demonstrating love. They know that I'm all about highlighting their wins. They're like, man, I could respect what Mr. Vergara has to say to me
Yeah.
because he means well. I know he has my back. So
Yeah.
when he tells me that, I'm gonna listen better than somebody who is always trying to get me to leave the classroom, always trying to call the office to try to like, oh, to get this kid out. He's messing up. Get him out again.
Yeah.
Send him. They're not going to listen to that person. They're
No.
not going to listen to that person. It's a weird situation. I understand. I get it when teachers say that, they want to keep the rest of the classroom safe. I get all of that. I understand all of that. But when two or three kids are always being, targeted or always being like, oh, this is the kid, this is the kid. And then the rest of the class is like, yeah, that's the kid. That's the kid. He needs to, then the whole school is like, yeah, that's the kid. The whole school is saying the exact same thing. And you're that kid? You're that
Yeah.
kid who's like, screw this then. Let me show
Hmm.
you how bad I could be then. Let me
Yeah.
just show you every day I'm gonna get everybody's attention. Every day I'm gonna get everybody's attention in a negative way. And that's what they do. They do that, and then it's a tough situation. So like I think that like at the beginning of the school year, this school year is going to end. And I
Yeah,
hope that whoever watches this podcast, right here, you have to start at the beginning of the school year, and you can't, like you said earlier, you have to be consistent, and you
yeah.
can't stop. You can't stop. Right? If you do it at the beginning of the school year, by May, you'll be all right. You'll be okay, and I don't know, it's a tough one.
I think what you touched on um, is super important as well. I guess it'd be the number three part of the three things that I think that are super important. We talked about relationships, we talked about mentorship, and there's a certain level of cultural competency that teachers need to have.
Yeah.
Because there are so few men in the classroom, it's a majority women and it's a majority white women. When you're teaching students who don't look like you, there has to be a level of cultural competency that you understand that, hey, when I do such and such, what is that messaging to my students? When I say such and such, what is that messaging to my students? And then when my students respond to me, what are they actually messaging? Because you may hear one thing and the student is communicating something else. And so
Right.
being aware of like, oh, when the student says this, it actually means this. It isn't them being disrespectful or them being this, that, or the other. It's just
Mm,
there's like you mentioned that swagger, that nuance of like, oh, what does that actually mean? And for you to be able to have enough thick skin as the adult to be like, all right, I'm not going to go tit for tat
yeah.
with the kiddo. This because
Yeah.
the moment you do, you've already lost, regardless of what the outcome is. Is you lost because now that relationship, that student is like, bet this is not a safe place. I'm going to have to be at war with this teacher rather than like, no, this teacher is a facilitator in my learning. And I
Yeah.
tell the students, I'm like, look, I'm a farmer of the future. I don't expect any of y'all who are in my class to leave my classroom being like, Mr. Pierre, that was the best year ever. It's probably going to be the next year or the year after that where you're like, oh, snap. What
That's
I
right.
learned in Mr. Pierre's class, the math, how
Yeah.
to respond to people, I'm actually using it now. Oh, snap. And
Yeah.
regardless if you ever come back and tell me, I don't need that. I had a student reach out to me on LinkedIn, and she was like, she's a student of mine. I think it was from 12 years ago. She's gonna go to law school and she's about to graduate. And I was just
Yeah.
like,
That's
this is
awesome.
what I mean. This is what
Yeah.
I mean. Like that for me is like if I never get another one, I'm like I know at least one person has benefited from being in my classroom,
Yeah.
and so that's it. That's it.
Yeah. And I
That's it.
like that statement. I always say like I just water. I just water seeds. That's all
Yeah,
I do. I
and he
just
makes
water
it
seeds.
grow.
Yeah. I just water seeds. That's all I do. And I might, like you said, I might not see the growth, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna water. I'm gonna
Yep.
water for a whole year, for
Yeah.
180 days. I'm gonna get out there and I'm just gonna water and water and water and water. And some I see, yeah, great, and some I'll never see grow at all,
Yeah.
and that's perfectly fine. That is perfectly fine as long as I know that I watered this seed. That's it, and they move on to
100%.
next class, and
Yeah.
that's what it's about. And so
Absolutely.
that's a good statement which you said. I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
um so Mr. P, one thing, do you ever call admin? This is a big thing. So I know I had people come on and and I asked this question. I'm like, do you ever call admin? Do you ever call admin for support?
Not anymore. Not anymore.
Yeah.
In the beginning, yes, because I thought that was the answer. I thought, hey, if admin comes in, takes the student out, they apply the discipline, whatever that may be, and then the kiddo comes back, whether it be later that day or tomorrow, whatever. Then I felt like, all right, that's sufficient. I learned by calling admin, this what that is communicating to the student is like, oh, Mr. Pierre is not truly in control of this space. If it's Mr. V who comes in, the person who I have to respect is Mr. V because
Mhm.
he's going to be the one who sort of doles out the whatever.
Yeah.
And I learned like, no, like you're going to come back tomorrow because I teach you for 180 days. That's the goal.
Hmm.
And so I want you to know, like, no, I want you in my classroom. I want you to see what happens. I want you to hear what's going on here because that's the only way that you're going to learn. And what I learned was every behavior is because some need hasn't been met. So why is it that you're acting out? Why are you trying to get this attention? Is the attention not being given to you at home? Are you like me, the middle child, and you're like, that's the reason why you're a class clown like I was? Bet, I know what that is. You want 5 minutes? Shoot. All right, if you can finish this work, the last 5 minutes of class, I'm going to give it to you. You got stand up jokes? Bet, let's go. We're going to finish our exit tickets,
Yep.
kiddos, and then Johnny's going to give it his jokes. And then
Mm-hmm.
Raheem is going to come right after them
Mm-hmm.
because he says he's better. And so we're basically going to, all right, you want a freestyle? Shoot, I got beats, let's go. And so whatever you're doing, or what I learned was, look, whatever the kiddo is doing is because something's not being met. Find out what that is and then feed to it, speak to it. As you said, water it so that the kiddo's like, oh, Mr. Pierre sees me.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Pierre, likewise, I'm a teacher right now. I'm doing my job. But outside of this, I'm going to the movies. I'm going to try to catch the game. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
happy my Celtics are doing well. We got just one more round to go, and then we're going to make. So, like,
Yeah.
all of this makes me who I am. Similarly to
Yeah.
you, I know there are so many things that make you who you are. So, yeah, I'm not calling admin unless it's something like the safety of the majority of the classroom
Yeah.
is in danger. Then, cool, this isn't something that I can do or I can speak to. And I
Mm-hmm.
also know that mental health is real. And so, when it gets to that point, we have protocols that we need to follow. And as great of a teacher that I am, I know that I'm not Superman and I don't need to be. I just need to do my job really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I was a classroom teacher, I never liked to call admin as well.
For
I never
sure.
liked to call admin as well. I was like, you know what? I don't care. I was like, I don't care who walks into this classroom, whether if the dean walks in this classroom, you guys need to still look up this way. I'm still in
Right.
charge of this class. I don't care
Yeah,
if the dean walked in the back of the room. I'm
exactly.
in charge of this classroom. If the
I'm the
assistant
captain.
principal, yeah, exactly. If the principal walked in, I don't care who walks in. If the
Yep.
superintendent walked in, you're still here. You're looking here. This is
Yeah.
Mr. Vergara's classroom,
Yep.
and you're focused here. And no, it doesn't matter who walks in the classroom, right? I'm in charge of this classroom.
Yep.
And so that's what and I never sent anybody to admin because I would deal with it. And like you were saying, if it was a big deal, if it's like a safety issue, if it was like a weapon or like something that somebody
Yeah.
could get arrested for,
Hmm.
yeah, that's not me.
Yeah.
I don't deal with that. That's something that admin deals with. Um, and as an admin, I have like so you got people that believe that whenever you get a phone call, whenever they call admin, they should just go up there for everything. Just any little thing. And yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. It's so tricky, and every situation's different. I get it if you're a new teacher and you need some support. I understand that. I'm gonna go up there. You're a new teacher. I need to help you out.
Can I
Um,
ask you something?
yeah,
So, because this is what I think about. Like you just mentioned, if you're a new teacher, is there a program at your school where those new teachers get to watch some of the veteran teachers get to sit in on those classes? Because I know that's difficult, and that's something that we've talked about on my podcast of like, yo, at your school, if you're a new teacher, ask your admin, like, who is the best teacher? Who has the best classroom manager so I can see it in real time? Because it's one thing to talk about it, but it's another to actually see in real time and then be able to debrief
yeah,
with the teacher, be like, hey, when Susie did this or when Raheem did that, you did this thing, or this is what I noticed. Why did you do that?
yeah.
Is there something like that at your school?
So I mean, it's available, but we don't actually practice it. I know it's
Okay.
available, and I know we mentioned it during the PD, but I think a lot of it has to do with trust. I feel like if
Yeah.
there's no trust in the school, right? If you don't have trust, if they don't trust
Facts.
each other,
Facts.
you're not going to be able to pull that off
Yep.
because if you're the teacher that's like, okay, I need to go see so and so because they do this better, then you're making yourself vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
You're making yourself vulnerable, and you're sending the message that like, I don't understand this, and that might make you feel a certain way, and then the other teachers might criticize you for, I don't know. It's just a weird trust
Yeah.
situation,
Yeah.
and so you don't see a lot of that. I don't at all the schools I've worked at. The only schools where it actually worked was when there was deep trust within the staff and they were good
Mhm.
with admin. When there was
Got it.
good trust amongst everybody, then you could pull that off.
Yeah.
But when there's not that trust there, you're not going to be able to pull that off. It's tricky.
No, that's facts. If
Yeah,
I am somehow concerned that if I, like you said, if I am vulnerable, open myself up, say, hey, I can't do X, Y, Z, then other folks are gonna might look at you sideways, like, yo, this is adding more to my plate.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's tricky.
and this is why we need more teachers like ourselves who are like, look, we get it. If we want great teachers to help produce more great teachers, we got to show that vulnerability. So
Yeah, yeah. So, Mr. P, we're coming toward the end of the podcast right here, and at the end of the podcast, I always ask, what are some tips you could give to the future generation of educators coming in?
yeah, I think it would be those three things that we talked about. Number one, if you are a new teacher to the future generation, look for a mentor. The mentors are usually going to be the people who um, are leaving the school at a reasonable time. It's not the teacher who, as soon as it's, if your school lets out at 3:30, at 3:29 they got everything and they're ready to
Yeah.
bolt out the door. It's usually the teacher who's going to leave around like 3:40, 3:45.
Hmm.
I'd say look for a mentor. I said usually. Obviously, there's always going to be that person who does leave at 3:30 who's like, look, I got it in the bag. I know what I'm doing. Set. But look for a mentor. If you can find a mentor, a teacher who's been at the school that you're going to, who's been there for a couple of years or has been teaching for a couple of years, just look to chop it up with them and like, hey,
Hmm.
what's your scope and sequence like? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And be just upfront. Like, I want to get better, but I don't know. I'm new.
Yeah.
So that's number one, mentor. Number two, I wish I journaled more, because those
Yeah.
dark days where things are rough are going to come. It comes for all of us. However, when you journal and you can look back and see that there are things that you've done really well, that's going to sustain you so that your present self is going to pour into your future self and vice versa and reciprocate that of like, you are doing some really great things. We just had Teacher Appreciation Week a couple weeks ago. Even if you get nothing, please know that it's usually the kids who are giving you the most trouble that at the end of the year are going to be like, hey, I really, really liked you. Or maybe the next year or 2 years will come back and tell you, like,
Yeah.
this is the impact that you had on me. So that journaling, I wish I did that in my first year. It would have saved me a whole bunch of tears because I felt like I was an awful, awful teacher. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until another mentor gave me that sort of gem of like, not just write some things down, like the good things that are happening every day, like soak them in. If today was a class where you got through your lesson from start to finish, from bell to bell, that's a
Hmm.
good thing. Like your pacing was good, on point. Write those wins down so that you can look back at them. And then finally, I would say the last thing is listen to the podcast. There are folks who are out there who want you to succeed, who are rooting for you, who are doing what they can, and
Yeah.
look for that. The algorithm will surely spit you all the negative stuff, but look for folks who are out there. So whether it
Yeah.
be Mr. V's podcast of Difficult Student or mine, The Chronicles of Mister, yeah, check it out. Those would be the
And
three.
so, one last thing, Mr. P, where can they find you? Where can they
Oh,
find you? Yeah, let's
yes,
hear
for
that.
sure.
Hmm.
So at the Chronicles of Mister, so chronicles.of.mister. Also, you can check out the website www.chroniclesofmister.com. Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. If you type in the Chronicles of Mister, you should see me pop up.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Greatly appreciate you coming out and sharing your wisdom with everybody here.
No doubt. Thank
Everybody's
you
gonna
for
listen
having
to
me.
this podcast.
Sweet, sweet.
All right, Mr. P. Don't leave yet, Mr. P.
Understood.
Don't leave.